Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm going to continue on with my treatment of the four horsemen that I started not more than a couple of weeks ago. I've covered them in depth before, but I wanted to give them individual space here because obviously we are staring down the barrel of a loaded spiritual gun, or prophetic gun, for lack of a better way to put it. Anyhow, as a recap, the white horse is Antichrist. He has an earthly wreath type, what's called Stephanos crown, which is not the royal diadem that Christ wears when he returns, an obvious juxtaposition between the fake and the real. He has a bow, and his goal is to go out conquering, and he does conquer, right? So he's given this crown for a time, in this case the tribulation. He's given the ability to conquer. This is all in God's plan, of course. It's allowed accordingly. The bow itself is the biggest sign that we should be paying attention to this particular actor, as he is not on the level. He is not honest. He is acting surreptitiously. He is duplicitous. He is a liar, and he's doing everything he can to fool all those into following him. But on his white horse, he appears like a savior knight, and he's going to go off on a crusade, and likely going to call it the war against the Antichrist, which he is going to call the King of the South, when really the King of the South is just a antagonist for Antichrist to be able to put all the blame on and to have cover. While he's going to war, we start to see a massive increase in civil strife, the red horse. I've opined before that this is likely a direct result of the fact that for the last however many years, the West at large has been inviting in Islamic peoples into the land, as if the assumption is that you can make these two cultures mesh, and the truth is you cannot. We see that picture in Daniel when it talks about the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream with the 10 toes. 3 are brittle, made of clay, 7 are iron, and although they attempt to mix, in the end, it never really works out. And that's something we should expect at all times when it comes to such disparate cultures. But that being said, when the King of the South, the Muslim Mahdi, as it were, goes to war, and the people that follow him or believe in him on our land start to support him, they will act up. And I make no qualms about the fact that there's likely a number of intentionally placed, I guess you would call them sleeper cells, specifically designed to be a grenade in the hand of the enemy that they pull the pin on at whatever time, so as to create as much drama and strife and, well, violence and death, let's be honest, on the home shores of those who are going against the King of the South. This totally makes sense to me. We're seeing a little bit of it right now playing out the ICE thing, but when Antichrist comes, it will be so complete and extreme, and the people will love him for it, that we won't be seeing the counter-protesters like we are now. So big difference compared to what's coming. The third horse, the accelerated cost of goods and services and wares and whatnot, is a direct result of the fact that Antichrist is not only going to war during the tribulation, but he's doing so likely during the timing somewhere within the scope of the 7 trumpet judgments, meaning the war is already expensive, but the costs are going to go up extremely. And obviously, we've spent all this money and energy trying to deal with the civil strife. Now we have to deal with the fact that he's hoarding all of the goods for his armies to be able to go over, make war in the theater of northern Africa. Essentially, that's where the first war is located, in northern Africa. It's going to be a massive expedition that's going to cost, well, everything. And it's going to be that Antichrist is going to subject his populations to all types of, well, things you wouldn't expect from a good leader. You know, hoarding of supplies, basically telling the people that they need to keep suffering for the good of the cause, etc. And we've heard these things before in the past, World War II, World War I, but the way in which Antichrist will go about it will be so extreme and so beyond the pale compared to anything the world has seen before that it will look like nothing compared to what's coming. The next horse, the pale green horse, is the result of the previous 3. And I'm going to read an excerpt from ichthus.com. And I once again will advise, I'm glad that you guys appreciate these videos. I really want you to share them. The whole goal is not to become popular. It's just to get out to those who would hear it so that you could share it. But if you really, really want super, super in-depth, even more informative than these videos can be, information, ichthus.com, ICHTHYS.com, Satanic Rebellion series, Coming Tribulation series, the Bible Basics series, the Peter series, the Hebrew series. They're all absolutely world-class. This man is looking for a massive reward when he gets to the Lord. Let's read about the pale green horse. Accelerated mortality, Revelation 6, 7 through 8. And when he, the Lamb, opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature saying, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, there was a pale green horse, and the one who was sitting upon it was named Death, and Hades followed with him. The pale green horse symbolizes the trend of monumental increase in the incidence of death. The reference to Hades, the place of the unbelieving dead, following closely and immediately after death, is a vivid symbol of the intensification and rapidity of tribulational mortality. In other words, with no space or lag at all between the coming of death and the internment in Hades. This expansion and acceleration of the rate of mortality will result from a variety of factors, specifically the war, revolution, and famine of the preceding three horsemen trends, as I mentioned. As a color of decay and putrefaction, pale green is a natural choice to represent death and its corruption. It must be emphasized here that the pale green horse does not merely represent the increasing number of deaths resulting from the wars, insurrections, and economic scarcities represented by the first three horsemen, but an expansion of mortality in its own right resulting from the cheapness with which Antichrist will treat the lives of his subjects. For a large element in elevating this trend of mortality to levels so far not yet seen in the history of the world since the Great Flood will again be deliberate policy choices on the part of Antichrist. In addition to the deaths and degradation of health brought on by the trends of the first three horsemen, the rider on the pale green horse represents death in its own right, for we may expect Antichrist, in his zeal for world conquest, given the nearly unlimited means required for such a course of action, to redirect resources from all of life's essential areas, namely medicine, law and order, beyond mere martial control, and environmental protection. The resultant expansion in plague and disease, crime and environmental hazards, coupled of course with the contributions of the first three horsemen, will greatly increase both the risk and the incidence of mortality for all but the very few. In a sick way, this expanded mortality rate hitting hardest the young, the old, and the infirm will also accomplish Antichrist's bidding by eliminating consumption by non-productive members of society. We can be relatively sure, therefore, that the ultimate effect of this massive redirection of resources from health, safety, and environmental sectors will not be unanticipated by Antichrist or unwanted. Just as the bow, sword, and scales represent weapons whereby Antichrist furthers his self-serving trends, so also in the same way Hades, mentioned here, must be seen as a tool for accomplishing his satanic objectives. In this case, the freeing up of resources by death for his megalomaniacal purposes. If that sounds at all like an NWO fear-mongering campaign, it's quite amazing to me that the world at large, Christians and non-Christians alike, can see these plans in the background and not actually understand that they are 100% written ahead of time, and they're just falling for the worldly iteration that will eventually scare them into joining with Antichrist. Would that it be that all would just accept the Lord and be able to see these things for what they are and get ready. But it's just so sad that people are so caught up in this world that even though they can see it coming empirically, even unbelievers, they still will not accept him. But that's another discussion. What we need to pay attention to and understand about these things is the mass majority of these effects, though they will affect believers, of course, is that we will have a significant amount of protection from these effects of these trends. And the reason is, it's not because we're perhaps better than everybody, although of course in faith God does see us that way, for certain. What I mean to say is, those of us who live through all of these things and see them all occur and lay out, we get to watch not only the Lord judge the unbelieving world for following Antichrist and falling for his evil nonsense and ignoring the 7 trumpet judgments, but we also get to see him take care of his own and get us ready, because our purpose, if we are to live through this time, is to live as a witness. Whether we end up killed or whether we end up in jail, those are the only 2 options for those who are not. That's really it. Whoever, sword, prison, or apostasy. Those are your 3 options, right? Those who end up in prison likely will make up that 3rd who will live all the way till the end. But again, the goal is to not actually let these things put fear in our hearts, but to make us aware of what's actually going on the ground. And when the time comes, for those believers who are perhaps tentatively still holding on, we will hopefully have the words to say and the Bible verses coming out of our hearts, as it describes it should, like living water, so as to help them in their time of need, bolster the weak knees, straighten the backs, and keep people marching towards Zion, even though it might be in a prison cell for the time being, because eventually they will be let out and they will be sent to Jerusalem, and they're going to have to have that. They're going to have that continued zeal, that fire, that lamp of faith that the 5 wise virgins decided to keep and save and preserve all the way till the end. So when the bridegroom comes, they won't be found. They won't be found unawares or not ready. So let me know what you guys think. I'm going to do a video next, essentially talking about where the seal trends start, because they are described as radiating out from a particular central source. So keep an eye out from that video. Again, I've put all of this together in long form before, but these smaller individual videos seem to be easier to address each individual topic. So in case you do share, which by the way, sharing, not so important, but sharing, because there's only going to be a few of you that actually hear this, but your ability to reach out to those who are on the ground in your lives, your own family, your friends, other believers that you may be surrounded by or go to church with. These are the ones who your ministry is set up for. So if you're learning these things and you're understanding these things, it is very much for a purpose, and you need to have faith and hold on. because one day you will be called upon to be useful to your brothers and sisters in ministry. And this gets into the whole discussion about the massive amount of rewards that are to be won by those who stand up and take all of this on the chin and do for what the Lord has for them, regardless of the outcome. Well, this is all for the good. And we need to remember that these things are by the Lord, for a very good reason. Not the evil actions necessarily, but the end result is all within his purpose. And we need to accept that and be ready and maintain that zeal no matter what comes. Let me know what you guys think. We will talk to you soon. Have a great